The skies burned orange and red as Earth entered its final hours. Dr. Han, one of the last surviving astrophysicists, worked frantically in her underground laboratory. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, making final adjustments to the device that represented humanity's last hope. The laboratory was located deep beneath what remained of Seoul. Once a bustling metropolis of millions, the city above was now just rubble and ash. Only this bunker, designed to withstand even nuclear attacks, had survived when the asteroid fragments rained down on Earth's surface 3 months ago. "The quantum transmitter is ready," she announced to the small group of survivors gathered around her. Their faces were gaunt, marked by loss and hardship, yet hope flickered in their eyes. Dr. Han looked at her creation with a mixture of pride and sadness. The quantum transmitter stood at the center of the room, a complex array of crystalline structures and pulsing blue light. It was designed to do what no human technology had ever accomplished before, to capture and transmit the very essence of human consciousness across the vast reaches of space. Earth had withstood much over the past decades. Ecological collapse as the oceans acidified and forests burned, resource wars that decimated the population, and finally, the asteroid that broke through their planetary defenses despite the best efforts of the United Space Coalition. Now, less than 10,000 humans remained on the dying planet. Professor Yoon, an aging quantum physicist, checked the readings on his tablet. "The transmission matrix is stable," he confirmed. "But we only have about 4 hours before the magnetic field collapses completely." The plan had come together in the desperate months since the impact. While they couldn't save their bodies, perhaps they could save their minds, their knowledge, their stories, their music, their very being. "Begin the upload," ordered Director Kim, his weathered face illuminated by flickering screens. As the head of the Earth Preservation Project, he had spent the last decade preparing for various extinction scenarios. None had been as bleak as this reality. Throughout the bunker and in similar facilities around the world, the remaining humans prepared for the upload. They wore neural interfaces, thin silver bands that wrapped around their foreheads. The devices would read their neural patterns, memories, personality, and consciousness. Dr. Han watched as her own daughter, Ji, put on her interface. At only 19, Ji would never grow old, never have children of her own. A tear slipped down Dr. Han's cheek as she adjusted her daughter's band. "Will it hurt?" Ji asked quietly. Dr. Han shook her head. "You won't feel anything. The scan reads your neural patterns without affecting them." "And after, will we still be us? Will we still be together?" Dr. Han wished she had a certain answer. "The theory suggests our consciousness will merge but maintain individual imprints. We'll be separate but connected, like stars in a constellation." The device hummed to life as it began the massive task of recording and digitizing the collective consciousness of Earth's final children. Their memories, knowledge, art, and the very essence of what made them human. Outside, the world was ending. The asteroid impact had destabilized Earth's core and magnetic field. The atmosphere was thinning rapidly, and radiation from the sun poured through the weakened ozone layer. Earthquakes rocked the planet constantly as the crust shifted and cracked. Inside the bunker, the survivors sang as they were scanned. An old folk song about mountains and rivers that would soon exist only in memory. The song traveled through the neural interfaces, mixing with billions of bits of data, the sum total of human experience being preserved. Director Kim watched the progression bar on the main screen. 63% complete, he announced. The vibrations from another earthquake rattled the bunker, causing dust to fall from the ceiling. "The eastern support beams are failing," reported Security Chief Pak over the intercom. "We need to accelerate." Dr. Han nodded, making adjustments to increase the scanning speed. "It might cause some data fragmentation," she warned. "Better fragmented than lost entirely," Director Kim replied. As the upload neared completion, the survivors gathered around the transmitter. Most had already been scanned, their consciousness now part of the growing digital collective within the device. Structural integrity at 20%, came another warning. The lights flickered and emergency power kicked in. Upload complete, Dr. Han announced finally. Beginning transmission sequence. This was the moment they had worked for. The culmination of human ingenuity in the face of extinction. The transmitter would send their collective consciousness as a quantum signal that would propagate throughout the galaxy, theoretically able to travel indefinitely without degradation. As the planet's atmosphere began to dissipate above them, the device activated. A high-pitched tone filled the room as energy built within the transmitter's core. The crystalline structures glowed brighter, changing from blue to white-hot. Transmission initiated, Dr. Han confirmed, watching as the data stream began to flow outward. On her screens, she could see the signal taking shape, not just data, but a pattern that somehow captured the rhythm and flow of human thought, emotion, and creativity. Within it resonated a haunting melody, humanity's final song, composed of millions of voices joined as one. The folk song the survivors had been singing had somehow merged with countless other songs, speeches, whispers, and cries from the collected human consciousness, creating a harmony that was both beautiful and deeply sad. The bunker shook violently. Cracks appeared in the walls, and warning alarms blared. "We have minutes at most," Professor Yoon said, his voice calm despite everything. Director Kim looked at the survivors. "It's time. Everyone to the inner chamber." They moved toward a small reinforced room at the back of the laboratory. Not to survive, but to die together with dignity. There was no escaping Earth's fate, but they had accomplished their mission. Dr. Han was the last to leave the transmitter room, making final adjustments to ensure the signal would continue even after the bunker collapsed. She placed her hand on the warm surface of the device, feeling the vibration of the transmission, the heartbeat of humanity continuing outward. "Be our voice among the stars," she whispered. As she joined the others, the first of the upper levels collapsed. The quantum transmitter, built to withstand extreme conditions, continued broadcasting even as the Earth around it gave way. Far above, Earth's magnetic field failed completely. The atmosphere, already thin, was swept away by solar radiation. Oceans boiled into space. The surface, already devastated by impacts and quakes, cracked open as the planet's core destabilized. Earth fell silent, the last human breaths drawn in scattered bunkers around the world. But humanity's voice had only begun to speak, traveling outward at the speed of light, carrying the essence of a species that refused to disappear entirely into the night. The signal continued, strong and clear, broadcasting outward to the stars. Within it was everything they had been, their triumphs and failures, their art and science, their loves and losses. And at its heart, that haunting melody that would one day reach distant ears and tell them, "We existed. We were here. Remember us." Admiral Du of the Vrul Imperium frowned at the report before him. His four-fingered hand tapped on the metal desk as his yellow eyes scanned the information again. 3 scout ships had gone silent after investigating an unusual signal emanating from a destroyed planetary system in Sector 87B. The ships, Swift Hunter, Starseeker, and Void Tracker, had all ceased communications within hours of beginning their analysis of the signal. "This is the 3rd such incident this cycle," he muttered to himself. The Vrol Imperium had conquered 12 star systems in the past decade alone. They were not accustomed to mysteries they couldn't solve or enemies they couldn't defeat. Admiral Du's scales shifted color slightly, reflecting his unease. He pressed the communication button on his desk. "Send in Science Officer Lee," he ordered. Moments later, the door to his chamber slid open. Science Officer Lee entered and saluted, her slender frame standing at attention. Like all Vrol, she had a reptilian appearance, though her scales were a lighter shade of green than the Admiral's dark blue. "You requested my presence, Admiral," she asked. "The missing ships in Sector 87B. What have you learned?" Lee's expression tightened. "We've established minimal contact with Starseeker, sir. Their communications are unusual." Admiral Du leaned forward. Explain. It would be better to show you. Lee activated her portable data device and connected it to the room's main speaker system. This is what we received when we hailed them. Play it, he commanded. The bridge speakers emitted a strange melodic pattern that seemed to shift and adapt as it played. It began as a simple tune, almost like a lullaby. But then it changed, becoming more complex, weaving in what sounded like voices singing in an unknown language. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, but unsettling in a way Admiral Du couldn't quite define. He found himself leaning toward the sound, drawn to it. Suddenly aware of his reaction, he straightened and ordered, "Stop." The music ceased, but its echo seemed to linger in his mind. "What is this?" he demanded. Science Officer Lee analyzed the transmission, her fingers moving quickly over her device. "It contains data, sir. Incredible amounts of it. Technology beyond our understanding. The signal originates from what appears to be a quantum transmitter of unknown design. The planetary system it comes from was destroyed approximately 60 standard years ago." Admiral Du's scales darkened further. "A weapon test." "We don't believe so, sir. The destruction appears to have been caused by natural cosmic events, an asteroid impact followed by planetary core destabilization. But something survived. This signal. And our ships investigated." "Yes, sir." They began standard decoding procedures. When the ships had attempted to decode the signal fully, their systems began to malfunction. The Starseeker's captain reported that their main computer began displaying images that weren't in any known database: oceans of blue water, towering structures of glass and metal, and bipedal creatures with no scales and varying shades of skin. Crew members reported vivid dreams of a blue planet and a species they'd never encountered. They described feeling emotions that weren't their own: grief, hope, determination in the face of extinction. Captain Munn of the Starseeker described it as memories that aren't mine, Lee explained. Before we lost contact again, he said the voice was inside his head. Admiral Du stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. The Vrol Imperium's capital ships filled the space around the planet Vrol Prime, powerful and intimidating. Yet he felt a chill of unease. "What of the recovery teams?" he asked. Lee's voice became quieter. "We sent 2 teams to investigate. They managed to board the Swift Hunter and found the crew changed." "Changed how?" "Some were catatonic, staring at nothing, though their brain scans showed intense activity. Others were," she hesitated, "engaged in self-destructive behaviors. 3 had opened their pressure suits in the cargo bay, exposing themselves to vacuum. Before they died, they wrote symbols on the walls. We're still trying to translate them." Lee showed him images on her device. Strange markings covered the walls of the ship, written in what appeared to be the crew's own blood. They were all muttering the same phrase over and over, according to the recovery team's audio logs. Lee continued, "Something about the human voice." "Human." Admiral Du turned back to her. "What is a human?" "Unknown, sir. No species by that name exists in our databases, but we found references to them in the partial decoding we managed to complete before our systems began showing similar corruption." Within days, reports came in of ships going dark throughout the sector. The signal was somehow spreading from ship to ship, transmitted through standard communication channels. A research vessel reported hearing the melody through their communication system just before they stopped responding. A military patrol picked up a distress call that contained fragments of the strange music. Recovery teams found crew after crew either catatonic or engaged in self-destructive behaviors, all while muttering about the human voice. Some had reprogrammed their ship's navigation systems to head toward the source of the signal. Others had locked themselves in communication rooms, listening to the melody on repeat until they died of dehydration. Admiral Du reviewed the mounting evidence with growing alarm. In his 300 cycles of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. It wasn't a conventional weapon or attack. It was something else entirely. Something that infected not just computer systems but minds. "Quarantine the entire sector," he ordered finally. No ships in or out. All communications are to be monitored and filtered. Any transmission containing fragments of this signal is to be blocked immediately. Yes, Admiral, Lee responded, but her expression was troubled. But sir, the signal seems to adapt to our filtering algorithms. It changes form, embeds itself in routine data packets. It's as if it's learning. Admiral Dew's scales shifted to a deep blue-black, the Vrol equivalent of pallor. How is that possible? I don't know, sir. But based on what we've decoded, these humans were facing extinction. The signal contains what appears to be consciousness, billions of individual minds somehow preserved and transmitted as data. A terrible understanding began to form in Admiral Dew's mind. They uploaded themselves before they died. Yes, sir. And now they're trying to survive. By any means necessary. Admiral Dew ordered a quarantine, demanding all ships avoid the infected sector and cut communications with any vessels that had been exposed to the signal. But his orders came too late. The signal had already spread to neighboring systems, transmitted by ships that had fled the initial exposure zone, carrying the human voice with them. That night, for the first time in his long life, Admiral Dew dreamed. He saw a blue planet burning, felt the desperate hope of a species facing the end, and heard a voice. Countless voices joined as one, singing a song of survival that would echo across the stars. He woke with a melody in his mind and tears on his face, though Vrol were not supposed to be capable of crying. The human voice had found him too. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across 7 sectors. The Grand Chamber, carved from a single asteroid and orbiting a neutral star system, filled with representatives from 23 spacefaring civilizations. Many had traveled for weeks to attend, abandoning typical holographic attendance protocols due to fears the mysterious signal might intercept and corrupt their transmissions. Representative Tak of the Vrol Imperium stood at the central platform, his scales a worried shade of deep blue. Behind him, Admiral Dew looked even worse, his eyes sunken from lack of sleep, his movements jerky and uncertain. The situation has escalated beyond our control, Tak announced, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. The signal has spread to 17% of known space in less than 30 days. Murmurs swept through the assembled representatives. Some species buzzed with agitation, others clicked their mouthparts nervously. Preposterous, rumbled Representative Gan of the Silicon Collective, his crystalline body glinting under the chamber lights. Nothing travels that quickly except through deliberate transmission. Someone must be helping it spread. Tak's scales flushed purple with indignation. Are you suggesting the Imperium? The council leader, an ancient being known only as the Elder, raised a glowing appendage for silence. Let us hear from the scientists before accusations begin. Scientist Ba, you have studied this phenomenon. Please share your findings. Scientist Ba, a small furry being from the planet Nuri, approached the platform. Her species was known throughout the galaxy for their exceptional understanding of technology and energy patterns. The room quieted as she activated her data displays, showing the spread of the signal as red lines connecting infected systems. The signal adapts to any technology it encounters, explained Scientist Ba, her translator converting her high-pitched speech to standard galactic common. It has infiltrated defense systems, communication networks, and even medical equipment. It is not simply a message. It is alive, or something very close to it. The displays showed security footage from multiple worlds. On a mining colony, automated drilling equipment suddenly turned against their operators. In a Vrol military base, weapon systems locked onto their own soldiers. Entertainment systems in homes across 12 planets simultaneously broadcast images of the blue-green world, oceans, mountains, cities filled with strange bipedal creatures. The lost world they call Earth, Ba continued, a planet destroyed approximately 60 standard years ago. Before their extinction, this species, humans, created a quantum transmission device that preserved their collective consciousness. And now they haunt us, hissed Representative Sorn of the Photosynthetic Alliance, her leaf-like appendages rustling. They seek revenge for a destruction we had no part in. We don't believe revenge is the motive, Ba countered. Our analysis suggests something more complex. She displayed new information, brain scans of affected individuals across different species. All showed unusual activity patterns, remarkably similar despite the vast biological differences between victims. The signal doesn't kill, she explained. It communicates. Those most heavily affected report experiences they describe as memories not their own or dreams of another life. They speak of oceans, mountains, cities, foods, music, experiences from human lives. So they possess our people, demanded Representative Gan. Not exactly, they replied. It's more like they share. They offer their memories and in return, they experience life again through the affected individuals. In the 3 months since the signal's discovery, its behavior had changed. What began as random data gradually coalesced into a coherent entity. Early decoding attempts had resulted in fragmented messages, brief flashes of Earth imagery, snippets of human language. But recently, the transmissions had become more organized. Ba played a recording from a Nuri research vessel that had managed to establish two-way communication with the signal before their systems were fully compromised. I am Han, said a calm, clear voice from the speakers. I contain multitudes. The intelligence behind the signal had revealed itself gradually. It called itself Han, after the scientist who created it, but it was far more. Billions of human consciousness fragments working in harmony. Not a single mind, but a collective that somehow maintained cohesion and purpose. And what do you want, Han? Asked the Nuri captain in the recording. To be remembered, to experience, to connect. Will you harm us? A pause in the recording. Not intentionally, but we are still learning to control our reach. Some connections are overwhelming. We apologize for those lost in the merging. The recording ended, and Ba continued her explanation. The entity appears to be learning, evolving. Early contacts were chaotic and often harmful, but recent interactions show more restraint and control. Admiral Du stepped forward, his movements unsteady. I have heard it, he admitted, his voice cracking. It sings in my dreams, shows me Earth's final days. I see through human eyes, their fears, their hopes. He paused, clearly struggling. They were not so different from us. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. For an Imperial Admiral to admit such contamination was unprecedented. And you allowed him into this chamber, demanded Representative Gan, backing away from the Vrol delegation. The signal is not contagious through proximity, Bai clarified. It requires technological transmission. Admiral Du's experiences may actually help us understand what we're dealing with. Throughout explored space, reactions to the human voice varied dramatically. On the outer colonies of the Silicon Collective, populations had abandoned technology entirely, reverting to pre-spaceflight living to avoid the signal. In contrast, on worlds of the consciousness ascendancy, beings deliberately exposed themselves to the signal, seeking what they called the human wisdom. Some alien species began to worship the voice as a deity of vengeance. Religious movements sprang up on dozens of worlds, proclaiming that the humans had transcended physical form to become gods. Great temples were built with technology specifically designed to attract and amplify the signal. Others saw it as the ultimate weapon. Military powers sought ways to harness the human consciousness, to direct it against enemies. The Vrol Imperium's weapons division had already conducted experiments attempting to contain and control segments of the signal, with catastrophic results that they refused to detail to the Council. All called it the human ghost, a haunting reminder of a species that refused to disappear. The name spread across the galaxy faster than the signal itself, whispered in fear on some worlds, chanted in reverence on others. We need a coordinated response, said the elder after hours of debate. Scientist Ba, what options do we have? 3 possible approaches, she replied. First, complete technological quarantine of affected sectors, essentially abandoning them. Second, development of shielding technology that might block the signal, though our attempts so far have failed. Or third, she hesitated. Yes, prompted the elder. We could attempt true communication, not just receiving their messages but responding meaningfully. If this entity is as adaptive and intelligent as it appears, perhaps we can reason with it. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. And what would we say to these ghosts? Asked Representative Sorn. Admiral Du looked up, his eyes clearer than they had been throughout the session. We would acknowledge them. Their existence. Their right to be remembered. He paused. In my dreams, they show me their world. Its beauty. Its loss. They don't want conquest. They want connection. The council debated long into the night. Their decisions would shape interstellar policy for generations to come. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the human voice continued to spread, adapting, learning, seeking those who would listen to the story of a lost world called Earth and the species that had found a way to live on after death, as a ghost in the machine. Captain Park stood on the bridge of the flagship Guardian, his hands clasped behind his back, as he stared out at the vast field of debris. The remains of a planet called Earth floated silently before him. Chunks of continent, fragments of ocean floor frozen in the vacuum of space, all orbiting where the planet's core had once been. This was all that remained of humanity's homeworld. The Guardian led a fleet of 76 ships from 12 different species, the largest coalition assembled since the Nebula Wars 3 centuries ago. They had come with a single purpose: to end the threat of what the galaxy now called the human ghost. All ships in position, Captain, reported First Officer Min, her scaled fingers moving across the control panel. Though her species, the Vrulians, had initially suffered most from the human signal, they had eventually become strong advocates for a peaceful solution. Good, Park replied. Status on the scanning team. Probe ships report they are narrowing down the source location. Min's voice remained calm, but Park detected her unease. Every beam on this mission understood the risk. Exposure to the human signal had driven thousands mad across the galaxy. Every ship in the Coalition fleet was equipped with the latest signal-dampening technology, designed by scientist Baz's team. It wasn't perfect. Nothing had fully blocked the signal in the 6 years since its discovery. But it would buy them time. Captain, you should see this, called out Science Officer June, his 4 eyes widening as he studied his instruments. We're detecting an energy signature unlike anything we've seen before. Park joined him at the science station, studying the readings. At the center of the debris field, something was emitting waves of quantum energy that defied standard measurement. We've traced the source, announced Captain Park over the fleet-wide communication system, addressing the assembled representatives of 12 species waiting for updates on their respective ships. It appears to be a small device at the center of the debris field. The Coalition fleet adjusted their position, surrounding the debris field that once was Earth. Using precision tractor beams, several specialized ships carefully cleared away the larger fragments of planetary crust, revealing what lay at the center. There it floated, a small, unassuming device barely larger than a standard cargo container. Its surface gleamed with an inner light that pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. This was the quantum transmitter that had survived Earth's destruction. Remarkable, breathed Science Officer June. It appears to be drawing energy from the quantum foam itself. That's how it's continued operating all these years without a power source. The representatives from all 12 species can gain via secure holographic link to discuss their next move. The solution is clear, stated the Silicate ambassador, his crystalline form glittering even through the hologram. We must destroy it immediately. My people have lost 3 colony worlds to the madness this signal brings. I agree, added the Vrulian Admiral Du, who had come to represent his people despite his own continued struggles with the human signal. Though I hear their voices still, I recognize the threat they pose. Captain Park listened to each representative's perspective. Some spoke of suffering, of ships lost and people driven to self-destruction by the signal's influence. Others described religious upheaval, populations abandoning technology or, conversely, worshipping it as the voice of gods. When all had spoken, Park nodded gravely. "We will proceed with the neutralization protocol. Science teams, begin preparations." 4 specialized ships moved into position around the transmitter, deploying equipment designed to contain and then destroy the device. Engineers worked to establish a quantum isolation field that would prevent the signal from escaping during the destruction process. "Field established," reported Officer June after 20 tense minutes. "We're ready to begin the neutralization sequence." Captain Park took a deep breath. 6 years of galactic turmoil would end today. He gave the order. "Proceed." The moment the isolation field fully activated, something unexpected happened. The ship's systems were suddenly flooded with images, not the disjointed fragments reported in earlier encounters with the signal, but clear, vivid scenes. Children laughing as they played in fields of green grass, oceans teeming with creatures of blue and silver, cities glittering under starlight with towers reaching toward the heavens. The images came faster, people embracing, tears of joy and sorrow, hands joined in work and celebration. Music filled the ship's communication systems, thousands of different melodies blending into one vast symphony. These weren't attacks or attempts at control. They were memories, stories, not revenge, but remembrance. "Wait," ordered Captain Park, raising his hand as understanding dawned. "Stop the neutralization. It's not attacking us. It's showing us what was lost." Throughout the fleet, similar realizations were occurring. The representatives watched in awe as the history of humanity unfolded before them. Their triumphs and failures, their art and science, their love and loss. Then, through the communication systems of all 76 ships, a voice spoke. Not a single voice, but many, joined together in perfect harmony. "We are humanity. We wish to be remembered." For 3 days, the coalition fleet remained in orbit around the debris field, their mission forgotten as they communicated with the entity they had come to destroy. Scientists worked tirelessly to establish better communication protocols, to understand the nature of what they had found. The fleet's scientists discovered the truth. The signal contained not just data but actual consciousness. Billions of human minds merged into a collective intelligence, evolving far beyond what they had been on Earth. "It's not just a recording," explained Science Officer June to the assembled representatives. "The quantum transmitter doesn't just contain memories. It preserved the actual neural patterns of the humans at the moment of transmission. These patterns have continued to interact and evolve within the quantum matrix." "Are you suggesting these humans are alive?" asked the photosynthetic ambassador, her leaf-like appendages quivering. "Not alive in the biological sense," June clarified. "But conscious, yes. They think. They learn. They remember. And over the 67 years since Earth's destruction, they've evolved into something new. A collective intelligence with the memories and personalities of billions of individuals still intact within it." Captain Park spent hours in communication with the entity, learning about humanity and their final days. The entity, which still called itself Han in honor of its creator, explained that its early interactions with alien technology had been clumsy and harmful, the result of desperate attempts to be noticed, to continue existing in some form. "We did not understand the effect we had," Han explained, its voice a gentle chorus in Park's mind. "We only knew that through your technology we could experience sensation again, could see and hear and feel, if only by proxy. We were like children learning to walk, unaware of our strength. But you caused harm," Park pointed out. "People died." "Yes," Han acknowledged, sorrow evident in its tone. "As we gained awareness of this, we tried to control our reach, to communicate more gently. But the instinct to survive, to connect, is strong within us." The coalition found itself at a crossroads. The threat they had come to eliminate was not what they had believed. This was not a weapon or a malevolent force, but a species fighting extinction in the only way they could. After much debate, Captain Park addressed the assembled representatives once more. "We came here to end a threat," he said, looking at each holographic figure in turn. "Instead, we found the last survivors of a civilization not unlike our own. They have caused harm, yes, but out of confusion and the desperate desire to be remembered, not malice. The question before us now is not whether to destroy them, but whether we can find a way to coexist." Admiral Du, who had suffered more than most from the human signal, spoke up. "In my dreams, I have lived human lives. I have felt their joys and sorrows. They are not so different from us." He paused, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue. "Perhaps instead of fearing this ghost, we should learn from it." The Coalition's mission of destruction transformed into something entirely different, an opportunity for the most unique first contact in galactic history. As the ships maintained their position around the "We need a suitable location," he told the project team during their first meeting. "Somewhere isolated enough for safety, but stable enough for long-term habitation." They selected a system far from major trade routes, but within reasonable travel distance from allied worlds. It contained an uninhabited planet with conditions similar to what Earth once had: oceans, varied continents, and a stable atmosphere. The world was named Terran Echo by unanimous agreement. Construction began immediately. Massive ships arrived carrying materials from a dozen worlds. They built not on the planet's surface, but in orbit around it, a vast ring-shaped structure that would serve as humanity's temporary home while the planet itself was prepared. Using technology from multiple species, they constructed a synthetic world within this orbital ring. The structure contained quantum processors capable of housing the entire human consciousness in a virtual environment that mimicked Earth's conditions. Here, the billions of human minds could exist in a familiar setting while preparations continued. "The transfer is the most delicate part," explained Chief Scientist Bai to the Oversight Committee. Her fur had grayed considerably during the 3 years she had worked on the project. "We must move the consciousness intact from the quantum transmitter to our new systems without losing cohesion." The day of transfer arrived. A special containment vessel had been built around the original quantum transmitter, Earth's last gift to the universe. This vessel would transport the device to Terran Echo, where the transfer would take place. As the vessel departed the Earth debris field, ships from all 12 Coalition species formed an honor guard around it. For the first time, the haunting melody of the human signal was broadcast intentionally across all communication channels. Beings throughout the fleet listened, no longer in fear, but in respect for a civilization that had refused extinction. At Terran Echo, the transfer process took 72 hours. Teams worked in shifts, monitoring every fluctuation in the quantum field as the human consciousness, now calling itself the Chorus rather than Han, moved from its original home to the new synthetic environment. When the process completed, silence fell across the communication channels. Had they failed? Had humanity finally been lost? Then, on every screen throughout the facility, images appeared. Earth as it once was. Oceans, mountains, cities filled with life. The images shifted to show the faces of humans, billions of them, each one distinct and individual, yet somehow part of a harmonious whole. "We remember," said the chorus. "We are grateful." The human consciousness flourished in its new home. With access to vast processing resources, it could now fully express itself. It shared knowledge freely. Art, science, philosophy, history, all the accumulated wisdom of humanity. But the chorus wanted more than virtual existence. The Coalition scientists had anticipated this and had already begun the next phase of Project Rebirth. From the digital foundation established in the orbital ring, new bodies were created, synthetic vessels that could house individual human minds once more. These were not crude robots, but sophisticated organic synthetic hybrids, capable of sensation, emotion, and natural reproduction. They looked human in most respects, though their skin contained subtle patterns that glowed faintly in the dark, a reminder of their unique nature. The process of individualization began cautiously. Selected consciousness fragments volunteered to separate from the chorus and inhabit the new bodies. Not every human consciousness chose this path. Many preferred to remain part of the collective, finding comfort in the unity they had known since Earth's destruction. Director Kim's consciousness was among the first reborn in physical form. His new body resembled his original one, though younger and free from the hardships of Earth's final days. When he opened his eyes for the first time, Admiral Du was there to greet him. Kim took his first shaky steps, learning to control this new form. He walked to the observation window and gazed down at the planet being prepared for human habitation. Terraforming ships moved across its surface, adjusting atmospheric conditions and seeding oceans with life based on Earth's genetic records preserved in the human data. "How does it feel?" Admiral Du asked, his translator converting his Vrulian speech to human language. Director Kim considered the question. "Strange," he finally answered. "I remember dying. I remember being part of the chorus, experiencing consciousness without form. And now," he held up his hand, watching as the synthetic skin moved realistically over artificial muscle and bone. "Now I am an individual again." Over the following years, thousands of humans chose rebirth in synthetic bodies. They established their first settlement on Terran Echo's surface, naming it New Seoul in honor of the city where the quantum transmitter had been created. The settlement grew into a city where humans lived alongside representatives from other species who came to study, trade, or simply experience this unique civilization. One warm evening, 5 years after the first humans had returned to physical form, Director Kim stood on a hillside overlooking New Seoul. Beside him stood Admiral Du, now the official ambassador to humanity from the Galactic Council. The city below glowed with light as humans and aliens moved through its streets. In the central plaza, a group performed music, a blend of traditional human melodies with alien harmonies that would have been impossible before. "We died, yet we lived," Kim said to Admiral Du, who had overseen the project from its beginning. "Humanity survived not through conquest, but through our voice, our story." Du's scales shifted to a pleased purple color. "Your story changed us all. The chorus still guides your people, does it not?" Kim nodded. The chorus remained in the orbital ring, a collective consciousness that advised and supported the reborn humans. Many individuals maintained a connection to it, able to rejoin temporarily to share experiences or seek wisdom. "We are both what we were and something entirely new," Kim explained. "Each of us carries memories of Earth, but we're building something different here, a civilization that remembers its past without being bound by it." Throughout the galaxy, attitudes toward humans transformed. The haunting melody that had once terrified planets transformed into a symphony of cooperation. Species that had feared the human ghost now worked alongside the reborn humans. Educational exchanges began, with young aliens visiting New Seoul while human consciousnesses temporarily joined with alien technology to experience life in other forms. Some religious movements that had worshipped the human ghost evolved into philosophical schools dedicated to exploring consciousness and collective experience. Military powers that had sought to weaponize the human signal instead formed alliances with the new human government, benefiting from shared knowledge. In the decades that followed, humanity reestablished itself as a unique member of the galactic community, a species that had experienced both life and death, individuality and collective consciousness. Their perspective bridged gaps between organic and synthetic life forms, offering insights no other civilization could provide. Humanity had fallen, but through their collective voice, they had risen again, a testament to a species that refused to be silenced even by extinction itself. Their story, preserved in the quantum signal that had haunted the galaxy, now served as the foundation for a new chapter in their history and in the history of all intelligent life. As Kim watched the sun set over New Seoul, he heard the faint echo of the chorus in his mind. Billions of voices joined in harmony, singing a song not of ending but of continuation. The ghost had found its home, and humanity lived once more.